Why in the world did you like the monstrosity of a movie that is The 13th Warrior?
But there's also movies that are kind of terrible as historical movies, but we think they're great anyway.
Why did people who were dirt poor literally create the most beautiful buildings that our culture has ever created? Historical authenticity. When does it matter and when doesn't it? Hello, I'm Gabriel.
And I'm Levi.
And this is The Mythy Men.
And we are here to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to our hearts, which is historical authenticity. And why sometimes it kind of doesn't matter.
Both of us grew up loving historical films from a very early age. And we also both worked in film, recreating historical things for various film projects, as well as museums. I worked as an 18th century tailor for a while.
I currently work as a researcher with particular focus on the ancient world. So needless to say, we like it when a film gets the visuals, the props, sets, and costumes of history right. And we think it's important. But there's also movies that we really like that are kind of terrible as historical movies, but we think they're great anyway. And we wonder why. Mm-hmm. For you, one of those is Pillars of the Earth, which I really didn't like. The sets, props, costumes are, for the most part, just not that great. But you really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So Pillars of the Earth is a TV show based on a book, and it's about building a cathedral during the anarchy, the time when King Stephen and Empress Maud were fighting over who would be King of England. What they did was they captured medieval society and how it worked mechanically very well with the different classes, with the church and the king and the nobles and workmen and peasants and everything in between. They got the mechanics of how society worked, but they also told the story of building something beautiful. And they went into the story trying to figure out, why did people who were dirt poor literally create the most beautiful buildings that our culture has ever created?
And multi-generationally, it's not you build it and it's there for you. This is, your grandchildren might not even see this done. And that's just, that way of thinking is very foreign to modern man.
Mm-hmm. What they did was they really captured the spirit of the medieval man trying to reach out and build something great for the glory of God. And they did it in a way that was compelling and that was respectful of the people in history who built these things. And it was really well worth watching because of that. It was a personal thing for me because I've always loved building things. And so seeing that played out in a story instead of the usual politics, war, and assassination and stuff that you usually see in historical films, it has a special place in my heart, even though the costumes are terrible, even though a lot of the characters' personal stories are very modern. They still managed to capture something
they get something right, and it's a thing that's very important to you.
Yeah, it was meaningful to me, and so I really enjoyed it for that.
A cathedral, my friends, is neither stone nor statues nor even a place of prayer. It is a continuum of creation. Beautiful work that, pray God, will never end.
So, why in the world did you like the monstrosity of a movie that is The 13th Warrior?
It's easy. Antonio Banderas. No. No, I really liked The 13th Warrior. They focused on something specific about history that is true, and that is the Norse philosophy surrounding death and predestination. The time of your death is appointed, and nothing you can do is going to change that. And your chances of survival in the thick of the battle are just as good as, hiding in a longhouse somewhere. And that's something that means that's a philosophy that's very important to me. And the 13th Warrior nails it. It's not that the characters aren't afraid. They feel fear, but they control their fear, and they know that, their lives are in the Allfather's hands. And after, if their only way out of this cave is to swim down this cave and probably run out of air halfway down, they're going to do it anyway because there's nothing else for it. Whatever they're faced with, they face it with courage and, in many cases, with reckless abandon. And what happens will happen. And it's a beautiful telling of that aspect of Viking culture that I think they did absolutely beautifully.
The Allfather rolled the skein of your life a long time ago. Go and hide in a hole if you wish. But you won't live 1 instant longer. Fear profits man nothing.
And that's something we noticed in all of these films that are so wrong, but we like them anyway. They pick a certain aspect about history, something that's true, historically true, and they try to communicate that in a powerful way.
If they're communicating something true about history, we can forgive a lot of mistakes, a lot of problems with the way they communicate it. And even sometimes we can forgive everything being wrong because it communicates the truth better than doing it right would have been. And a good example of that is A Knight's Tale. So this is it's a ridiculous comedy film. It's a lot of fun, and we both enjoy it quite a bit. So what they did was they took a historical thing, jousting, and the fandom that surrounds it, and instead of trying to tell it in a historically accurate manner, they managed to translate, to turn medieval jousting, the medieval martial sports, they translated that into something that a modern audience could understand with their football cheers and Queen music, and they communicated a truth about how people obsessed over and were interested in the martial sports in the medieval era, and they translated it into a modern film that people could understand. All the blatant inaccuracies of the film communicate the truth about medieval jousting and the way that people saw it better than even doing it accurate could have.
They even did this in little minuscule things like the Nike branding swoosh that the armorer puts on the armor, and that's a very medieval thing. The armorers were, the engineers, the car designers of that period, and they were proud of their work, and they put their touch marks. We know of historical smiths, and we have their stuff still extant, and so, that idea of that pride with having created something special that you're going to put your mark on, and using modern branding and an understood sports brand to communicate that thing was really, really good, and surprisingly, the filmmakers understood that.
One of these.
The marks of my trade. Should another knight admire the armor?
So, historical authenticity. When does it matter, and when doesn't it?
If you're telling a true story about real characters, it's really important, or based on a true story, it's really important to be truthful and honest about history.
But sometimes it is worth getting things intentionally wrong to communicate the one true thing that you're trying to tell better, like they did in A Knight's Tale.
Exactly.
So, what do you guys think? Are there films that are guilty pleasures for you that are historical but really not very, that you think communicate something true?
Let us know in the comments. Thanks very much for watching.